Hello, everybody. Everybody, so the couple of people who might watch this. I woke up today for a comment on a video. I don't know why I get these things saying this guy is drunk or sleepy. I hope I can be more enthusiastic today about what we're going to discuss. Now, what we're going to do today is another section of our solar class. And in this section of our solar class, we're going to complete our analysis of the levelized cost of electricity. I'm going to put this file onto the website, and we're going to deal with income taxes, and we're going to deal with financing from a project finance perspective, which is not necessarily the way I think you should really construct the levelized cost of electricity. Do I sound too sleepy? I had a cup of coffee, a big cup of coffee, and listened to the news, and it was pretty bad. So maybe I'm a little bit out of it. But we're going to complete those two sections. Now, once we complete those two sections, I'm going to do what I do a little bit with my classes, and sometimes I might get criticized. Oh, you're going back and forth too much. Number one, once we have this, we can really compute the levelized cost of storage. And now, when I've done this before, I've done it in too complicated a way. I'm going to just, in a few minutes, to compute the levelized cost of storage, walk through one by one by one to keep it really simple. And when we look at things like our financing, we want to understand the uncertainty and understand how people compute the mean squared error. Excuse me. Uh, uh, Shit. Okay, I'm looking for the uh, solar uncertainty. I can't find it now. Shit. So we're also. I'm going to show you how the mean squared error a simulation with Monte Carlo works. We're going to cover all of those things, and most important, I had a class where some of the people were building ships, and we're going to be able to really walk through, and I'm putting all of these things on the website, and I'm going to go through this again. So if I repeat myself, don't give me one of these hurtful comments, please. The question is about hydrogen, and I've gone through a couple of videos on hydrogen, but are going to go through. I'm just hopefully I'll make this today. Hydrogen is not capital intensive. The cost of electricity drives everything. And if we have to model hydrogen, we have to take our LCOEs and just put them together. And we'll talk about the history of hydrogen in using one of these methane reactors, steam methane reactors that produces a whole lot of carbon compared to electrolysis that produces nothing. We're going to make a levelized cost of this thing. The traditional way, or the way where you take natural gas, which has CH4, and get the H4 out of the C, and the C turns into CO2, CO, and then CO2, and that's bad, versus an electrolyzer where we take water and we put it together and we put some power supply and we get hydrogen out of that and the levelized cost of that. And how can we do this? Now, in my other videos, typically what I do is make them too complicated, and then we go back to simpler methods. If we get this LCOE stuff down, we can do this, and then we can look at how we take that hydrogen, go backwards, go the other way, put it in here in a fuel cell, and get electricity out. And I tried to find good diagrams that were analogous so you could see how you put the electricity in and get the electricity out. Basically, that's storage. And then we go through, we're going to have to compute the LCOE, but every single little component, emphasizing why LCOE is so important. This is what's in hydrogen, some of the materials in these in this stuff, which is coated with platinum, which can be expensive, and we got to work through the cost, and then we can do a LCOE, not of these two kind of hydrogen things we're going to do, the electrolyzer, the clean electrolyzer versus the bad gray hydrogen, and get the real cost, including the emissions cost of this stuff, and go through some data. Getting the data is kind of the hardest part. I think hydrogen for me is where solar was a long time ago, when people didn't know really what the costs are, the operating costs, the capacity factors. They didn't know that kind of stuff very well. Now it's all kind of clean and understandable. And so we're going to compute the levelized cost of transportation, which you call the total cost of operation. You don't call it levelized cost, but it's basically the same thing. And we can get the cost of transportation for a truck or a car and compare a fuel electricity vehicle with a battery, a fuel cell electricity vehicle with a conventional electricity, and see what the sensitivity is to things like petrol prices, or in this case, maybe some others, natural gas prices. We can do some sensitivities, and then we'll go even further to get the ammonia, because you can use ammonia apparently to, I didn't know this really before, but you can, instead of making fertilizer with the ammonia, you can use it to create electricity on a ship, and then make an electric motor instead of a other motor. And we need LCOE to really get there, and to really get green, we need LCOE on this side. We need LCOH, we need LCO air separation, and LCO ammonia, but we're not really finished. Then we've got to go and get the cost of the truck, and we need the total cost of operation. And then I've just taken some stuff from my secret weapon, who's named Maximiliano. He gives me these wonderful PowerPoint slides, and he showed me this port. Here's the old port with some, what is it? It's got an LNG terminal, a gas plant, and some oil terminal, an airplane, and they're going to make it into this. How cool is this? It's a wonderful dream. Let's make a solar project, onshore energy, offshore energy, wave power, hydrogen, and then we can get one of those ships that uses the hydrogen, which maybe they should have, we could crop in here or something like that. That's the dream, and it's all if we can get the levelized cost of hydrogen. Again, we want blue versus gray versus green hydrogen. Hydrogen for transport and total cost of operation, hydrogen with different distribution strategies. The nice thing about this, which in our dream, is that we don't have to pay any electricity distribution costs. We don't have to pay, if we're using the hydrogen to fuel a ship, we don't have to pay any distribution cost for the hydrogen. All of these kind of strategic elements could be really important. If we have to pay a whole lot of, if we put this way somewhere else, and we have to get the electricity over distribution lines, and then we have to transport the hydrogen, those things really can switch things around. Now, if we make the hydrogen with electricity, we might not get, even though we have solar and wind, we might not get 100% load factor. But so what? It's less capital intensive. It's so less capital intensive. It's all about the cost of electricity that really drives these things. And instead of just BSing, when we compute the levelized cost of hydrogen, and then we go into transport, and we really see what kind of costs are really necessary to make all of this stuff work, we're going to go and get the levelized cost. And instead of, here's what I want to do, I'm going to put, when I finally finish these slides, which may be never, I'm going to put a little link here, and you click on that. I think you can put a link in PowerPoint. I hope you can. And when you press a link, it'll go to my website, hopefully, and you download a file, and you do your levelized cost analysis yourself. and you put your own cost of capital, inflation, plant life, other things in there, and you can test your own assumptions instead of just getting one of these graphs, which are beautiful. This is the cost of a battery electric vehicle, and this is for a bus. And here's what they say the future is going to be. And I would love to know what kind of electricity price we're using for solar, and what kind of capital cost we're using for the bus, and how much, if we need a government subsidy, how much subsidy do we need to get this to work? So it could be like solar, where the German government put all those subsidies on the feed-in tariffs that some people in Germany might complain about, which really dramatically changed the world. We can look at all the cost then of each piece, but then we'll just have a little click and you can understand what the capital, operating cost, production, and all the things like degradation, how they all affect it. The idea here, this is, somebody said you need to get cost of hydrogen to these levels. These are not high levels, but we're going to, when we do this, we really need to understand some conversions, converting the power, the electric power to hydrogen, converting natural gas to hydrogen for the SMR, and then we'll proceed. Now I'm going to stop here. We're going to go through this a little more. Okay, I'm probably going to introduce this again, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself and somebody says I'm drunk. I wasn't drunk during that video, I think, because I think I made that video in Saudi Arabia. Certainly can't get anything. I don't think, it must have been I was maybe tired. So now let's work through. I showed you this file, and you can look at it, and we're going to go through and discuss just a little bit about P90, P50, sculpting, and some other issues to finally get the LCOE. Now, let's get the taxes straight first. And this was kind of driving me a little bit crazy. And at first, I'm going to use straight line depreciation. And we put a 30% tax rate in, maybe here, for our Saudi solar that we want to demonstrate that doesn't have taxes. We can kind of look at the impact of taxes. So now all of these blue lines, we need the IRR, and we're going to back in. We're going to back into the IRR, the project IRR that yields a equity return. That's where we're going with this. So at the very bottom, it's got now quite a few input lines and quite a few output lines. But when we do this, when we have this technique really, really down, this is why it's the next part of our solar. We need to get the solar right, put some parameters on the debt. Now, if you look, I put really, really long debt tenors on some of that, and that's this implicit assumption that we can refinance the debt. And then we put the target equity IRR because investors, and quite rightly so, not what you learn in school, that WACC is everything, and Mr. Merton Miller, who's a wonderful man, nice man, I met him once, he really amazing. He said, well, you should look at everything on an operating basis. You shouldn't. You should really go underneath to get the economics. What he said was debt doesn't matter, but that's contracting. That's on the other side. That's distributing the cash flow. But in the real world, how much bank debt a banker will put in a project is an immense signal and immensely important. We all know that. And we all know that real world CEOs or CFOs, maybe more, will use equity return, and they won't really look at a project return, and what we're going to do is a little goal seek to back in to the project return to get the equity return. Now let's first deal, and we have this one. I'm sorry, it's a little complicated. We have a section for real capital recovery, and we have a section for nominal. And we've discussed the issues with degradation. We've discussed the issues with degradation. We've discussed the issues with inflation. We've discussed how to use the PMT function in a prior video, so you can look at that. I hope I'm not sounding drunk. And then you can, then we can start to add the last couple of things about taxes and financing. Okay, now if we for incorporating a tax rate, what we've done, so now it's going to get technical. You can turn it off, you can look at the file, and maybe I'll just tell you what we'll do. But we started with this PMT, and I left that in. That's what we started, and then we just multiplied the PMT by the capital cost, and you notice now I have some battery cost, and we have to not be afraid to put different methods of computing total capital cost, total output, whether this is hydrogen or the miles or the kilometers you drive or nautical miles or anything else. We've got to put these things in. We've got to put in the life. Now, the life might be very different for different pieces of our project. For example, solar, we could have an inverter that has a shorter life or a medium shorter life. And what we'll have to do there, I'm going to have to address that in a separate video when we really work through the details of hydrogen. We'll just put two columns over here, one for the piece that's not the inverter, and then the inverter piece, or in hydrogen it'll be that stack thing you have that has a very different life than the overall electrolyzer, and you have to replace it in different periods, and when you put your replacement cost, it can be a pain. Now, so here's our tax rate. So here's our PMT, which we would compute a regular way. And then we said, okay, well, let's take our project return. Let's take our project return, which is a pre-tax project return. And then let's adjust that for the degradation. That was in the last video. And the first, and then this is the IRR, excuse me, that gets adjusted for the degradation. One plus the regular old IRR divided by 1 minus the minus the degradation minus 1, and that inflates the IRR just enough to cover us for the costs we have for degradation. Now, when we get into hydrogen, it's going to be a little bit different because the degradation is only on an operating cost, not on the whole system. And then we said, okay, let's use our PMT function. And then we're finished. But this time, now what I want to do is make an adjustment for our taxes. And the first adjustment we make for the taxes is, let's put how about here? Let's just make it as transparent, as explicit as possible. And then we'll put PMT factor adjusted for paying taxes. And when we do that, we put a, let's press Control D to get that in. Okay. And then we'll just take this thing, and we divide by 1 minus the tax rate. That's all you do. And the reason you divide by 1 minus the tax rate instead of multiplying the result by 1 plus the tax rate is because when we increase our capital recovery, it increases revenues. When we increase revenues, that increases taxes. In the old days, there was something like, we called it 2 for 1. If we put a 50% tax rate in here, it's almost as if you have to double. In fact, it is. You double the recovery, because you have to. You don't just multiply it by 1 plus the tax rate. You do the other thing. Okay, 1 divided. Take the result. And then I have Shift Control R here, I guess. Okay, let's not copy it to all our storage analysis right now. And what I did on this one is use index function and said, okay, if we put a different number in here, it's just going to take, if we put number 2 in here, it's going to take the second one. So then we just press Control D, and this takes the second one instead of the first one. If I put 25% tax in here, we get a little difference. Now, we're not finished. We also have to put the PMT factor, and we have to adjust for the tax, PMT, for tax depreciation shield. Now, this is a classic kind of thing. I remember, I must be a little bit weird because I remember this stuff. I remember having a class in the 1980s, and there was some inflation back then, and the teacher kind of trying to explain that if you could get a much faster tax depreciation, that will have a dramatic effect on the economics of a capital investment. And he was, of course, right. And what I have done up here is assume straight line depreciation. Now, if there's a whole lot of inflation, we got to be really careful about this. Then the value of the tax depreciation will be less. And what we're going to do here is take this number and take out, we're going to reduce this is a benefit to us that we get to depreciate the asset, but it's not, we don't get to depreciate it immediately. And the effect of the depreciation, it's non-cash. Who cares about anything but the tax effect of the depreciation? We're going to get that incorporated. Now, to get that incorporated into the analysis, the first thing we can do, if it's straight line, but this only works if it's straight line. So at the very end of this video, I'm going to show you how to incorporate a declining balance. And if you're in the US, MACRS, MACRS. Oh, I'm fancy. Okay. Oh no, this is all bullshit because you didn't have makers. No, it's not. You can incorporate kind of any with the VDB function, and putting the VDB function in a PDF, you can kind of incorporate just about any kind of tax thing you want. And then you might say, oh, you can't incorporate the half-year depreciation. Maybe. Yeah, you could even do that. Okay, so right now, if we use PV instead of NPV or PMT or anything else, and we take, and this is key, to take the pre-tax rate, nominal rate. We're going to apply this to both the real and the nominal LCOEs, but we want the real rate. Now, I should have opened an email and showed you something. By now, I think everybody's turned the video off. And there was one person who sent me an email saying, oh, no, I kept it on, and I loved it. I'm going to find that email later. I'll put it in the next video because I have to practice these videos so I don't show that I'm so drunk all the time. And then we put this in. So that would be if I took the PV of the depreciation, if I take the NPV of that 30, but now I can't take 30. I've got to take 1 divided by 30. That gives me the amount of present value at the nominal rate, and everything gets discounted at the nominal rate. So again, if you get this right, you can put the hydrogen storage, other kinds of electricity, anything else you want in there, okay? And then, okay, and I did it wrong because we take it over 30 years. Of course I did this wrong. Okay, and I have to do these things a whole lot. And then I get the number, but the PV always comes in a negative kind of number because I guess, Excel wants to have a negative number that then followed by a positive number to get 0 NPV. And so that's the NPV of just a straight line depreciation. Again, it doesn't work with accelerated. And what we're going to need here is to put, instead of a project life, we're also going to have to put a tax life. Okay, and if we have a different tax life, if our tax life is only 10, for example, and we can do that right now, I think that's no problem. So instead of using the project life, let's use the tax life, and instead of using the 1 divided by the life, we do it here, and then we get a much bigger. That was what that man was telling me in the 1980s. We get a much higher NPV, and then that NPV gets applied to the tax rate. If we took a 1-year tax rate, a 1-year life, then we get it back, and we get almost all of the penalty we have for taxes. We get that all back. So these issues are not small issues. They're not small issues. Okay. And so what we do here is we take this PMT and multiply it by 1 minus the tax shield value. And this is, I think, this must be a complete booking. I wish I could go somewhere. This must be a completely lost art. And then we can get it from our excuse me, we can get this from we can put the index in here, and this index works with this thing, so we can get it for any one of our different kind of technologies. Now, when I do this, one of the things I want to do is prove that the Saudi case really works. And I can see what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to split this into another video and stop with our taxes. And let's multiply this tax rate, this new PMT factor, and let's take that new PMT factor and multiply it by the total capital cost. And that gives us our capital recovery on a simple nominal basis. And then when we go all the way down, well, now look what I've done. I've messed up because I did it separately down here, and I had already done it, but that's okay. Because when we go all the way down and finally get to our levelized cost, or our total cost of driving, or total cost of operations, we put in the capital recovery first. And this should be nominal capital recovery and nominal O&M cost and total nominal cost. So we're going to take now our capital recovery that in the nominal case, it hasn't been adjusted for inflation, but it has been, we took our basic starting point and it's been adjusted for degradation, and it's adjusted for the taxes we pay, and it's adjusted for the final taxes. And if you can get really comfortable with that, it's not a big deal. You can take this spreadsheet, you can redo it. My friend Maximiliano, he's really learned it. He's an engineer, and he's the one who gives me these wonderful hydrogen things. And he's got a total handle on this, and it was a little struggle for when you know, when you really do things, and you know, and then my argument, and it's a big argument, is that you can make this into a financial model, and when you make it into a financial model, that's what we did before, but this time, after the financial model, I put a depreciation rate. Now, I did this a little bit badly, but we'll put 1 divided by the the tax life, and I don't have it here. So let's go back and do the same thing I've been doing everywhere. Just Control D. So that tax life, we can do a sensitivity kind of analysis on the tax life. And I guess I'll do it simplistically and put tax, depreciation period, and click on the this is going to be a flag, and we'll put the tax life in. And we're going to adjust it for we've got to first be in the operation period, and then we take this one and put less than or equal to this, and press F4 and Shift Control R, and we better get our 10-year period, and then we can take this one, equal 1 divided by this one. Do I sound drunk? Take this and put that over here, and we've got our depreciation amount, and I hope I should have, of course, put a sum here, but that better sum up that depreciation amount. I don't need here. Let's just make sure this. Yes, what did I do? I took the rate and multiplied it. Now, when we did the LCOE, now our pre-tax IRR is higher than what we wanted, and that whole thing we did pre-tax no longer makes sense, and we put the pre-tax down below here and get it to be after tax. And my other friend who said, oh, any kind of grandmother can compute LCOE. Well, maybe so. Maybe my grandmother, she was really smart, but I don't know. It's not quite as easy, and it's really helpful for me to, instead of, if you really want to understand different economics, and I know you can get criticized. Nobody cares about economics. Nobody cares about which the real least cost alternative is, but you're going to get killed one day if you don't. Okay, so this matches, and this pre-tax IRR is higher, and it all works. We put a higher rate in, and we didn't have to yet do a goal seek or anything else to kind of get there. Now, what we're going to do next is do this whole thing, and instead of putting it for the putting it in for the nominal IRR, we're going to put it in for the real IRR. And this time, I hope that I did the same thing. I already did it here. I divided it out. And then after we divided it out, I multiplied it by 1 minus the thing. But you notice that I used the if I could get a stupid word out of my mouth. I'm not, do I sound tired today? I am. I have all these stupid classes online and I don't get to meet people anymore and I hate it. Where am I? If we're going to use the nominal rate because tax depreciation is nominal. And if we put in a really high if we put in a really high rate of inflation, let's put a 12% rate of inflation, then our real IRR goes down. But when we adjust it for taxes, this value of the nominal, this value of the tax shield is much, much less in real terms. I think that worked. I hope that worked. Let's put a zero inflation. And then we get the value of the tax shield being the same. And this, remember, we divide by 1 minus the tax rate, and we multiply it by 1 minus the tax shield. That's the same. And if we have a really long tax life, and we put in if we put a really long tax life in and we put a really high rate of inflation, this value of the tax shield goes all the way down to just about nothing. Okay, while we still have to pay all this taxes by dividing it by 1 minus the tax rate. Now, this is all crap because if I had 20% inflation, then I need a 25% IRR or let's say yeah, that's okay. 26% IRR. We need 6% above the rate of inflation. And if we go down here and look at our nominal LCOE, that's not as high as it. Just a minute. Well, that's because let's take the first one. And I was going to expect that we need, because we're inflating, let's just make sure that we have our O&M costs adjusted appropriately. When we put our operation costs in, now our operation costs have gone up dramatically, and our capital recovery has gone up dramatically, and our nominal USD per megawatt hour is 141, but when we take the inflation out, it's still that low 35, and that's what I put up here. And you think I should do this? Maybe, because we're starting to this. Let's press Shift Control E, because the generic macros are open, and I know it just irritates the shit out of me, but the people still use the paintbrush all the time, or don't make their own little personal formatting macros. That was a diversion. I agree. Sorry about that. So if we have a 30-year tax life and this high rate of inflation with, let's leave 30% taxes. If we could put in 5-year tax life because we get an incentive, then our cost of our solar goes down a lot. If we could put a 2-year tax life, it could even go more. So that's the idea. That's the general idea. Now, the next thing we should check, and first of all, let's make absolutely sure I didn't make a mistake. So we've got our real capital recoveries, and when we put our real capital recovery, let's make sure that that comes from here. If I press alternate U, I promise to do this. This is this little thing in my little generic macros. It says final, it says capital recover is this one. And then if we click on this one, it goes there, and then it says what's in it. And I hope it took the right one. Okay. Maybe I should have just used maybe I have a little work to do on that. That's alternate U with the generic macros open, and I have to upload a generic macro file version today because I put this control tab so I can kind of go through all the different sheets that I have open. Okay, and now there's just, before I finish this video, and we're really getting to the end on the LCOE. Okay, we're getting to the end now. When we for the next video, what we'll do is let's put 10% here and 2% here and get it all kind of back to where we were. And this, I have a much higher premium on the rate of inflation, and that's why our solar cost is going up. And if we go to our financial model, we put a little thing that we get, this was the nominal rate, and it gives us our 10%. This is our big check. So we could have done this. What we could have done is made a financial model, done a goal seek, and put all our factors in and put our tax life in and do it like that. That's fine. And I'm trying to argue, but by the time you have one of these hydrogen projects or with different lives, it's going to be a real pain if you try to put it all in a financial model instead of adding it all up together. In fact, for some of the engineers who really are interested in the LCOE, I made a course just on LCOE, and I have not had time to kind of put it in my public classes. Okay, now I'm going to now put in, instead of just the tax life, we can put in the factor for the variable declining balance. We'll put V variable declining balance factor. And if we do that, and maybe I'm going to put one is straight line. So we could still make it work with straight line and put our different factor in, but different countries have different factors. So let's say if we put 2, it's called double declining balance. Okay, and you can, if you're fancy with makers, I used to call it MACRS because I remember the debate over the 1984 tax law, 282 tax law, I forgot which one. Then we can take this, we can put 1 in here, 1.5, okay, and let's make the rest of them 1. And then we're going to incorporate that. Now, when you use the variable declining balance, let's go to my friend over here. If I put 0 and press Alt-EIS, now I use this these days for illustrating production payment, where you can have a kind of curve, you can kind of get whatever you want. And if we have the life here of 5 years, and then we can put the depreciation rate, and we start in year 1 and you put equal VDB and then I put a cost of 1 in and a salvage value of 0 and put the life in, and then put the start period over here and then the next period here, and then finally we put the factor in. Let me, because that's what I was talking about, let's put factor. Okay, and then what we'll do is, and maybe this really is the right way to do this kind of stuff, so let's put a factor of 2. All right, and I hope by this time that you have the video turned off, probably. Okay, when we do this, the first thing is we get a num. We could put up here if error. Some people object to using if error and say that's really bad because you can be hiding like a ref or something, and you want to see if you've got some kind of ref in your model. And we can kind of check that this really adds up to 100%. So if we put a factor of 1 in there, we get a straight line. 3, we get really fast. 4, okay. So this could be a decline curve almost on an oil facility. You could put 6 and then get the same thing. Now, when we're doing we can put pre-tax rate, and this, we're going to put the pre-tax rate, not the after-tax rate. So this, if you put WACC into your formulas, you'd have to put a pre-tax WACC and an after-tax WACC if you're going to do it with WACC, which is what we're going to talk about in the next video. And if I put a discount rate of 10%, then we can put the NPV PV at the WACC, at pre-tax. Okay. I hope I'm not. Okay, and then I'm glad I put it up here so we can keep reading our friend Asim Ali. Okay, and then we put a tax rate, and let's say that's 30%, and then we put this thing and multiply it together, and then, when you do this, I saw my friend, somebody in the class do this. He pressed Control-C, Alt-ES, W. And then maybe, does that work? I don't know. You could almost make a little shortcut key for that, couldn't you, to fix that? You just record the macro and you stop. So that's our factor. But then, can you imagine if we did this over here, we'd have to put down here, we'd have to put kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'd have to do this. So this might be a good little exercise to make a UDF. And when you make a UDF, you can use things, hopefully, I haven't made it yet. This is a try. We can use the VDB function. We can use the if-error function. We can make a loop that goes around and computes this and has a little dimension variable. So let's make the UDF. So let's press Alt F11 perhaps. And now I've got a call. And I like the fact that I have a call because I'm going to... So that was my friend Max. And he gave me all this data. He's been helping me. He's been explaining things to me. And while I was making this video, I missed his Zoom call. But he said, go ahead and finish the video. And he's not too mad at me. And okay. Now, so what we're going to do is go and make a little VBA code for this. Okay, and this is just not a VBA. We'll do a UDF. Okay, and our UDF, let's edit one of these things. I don't know what's in this sheet anyway. And Instructions for basic method. Oh, this, I don't know. What is this? Okay, let's put it here. Good. Okay, so let's get some space. And after we get some space, let's pull it function and call it tax depreciation shield. It's a big deal to figure out what the name of the function is, and let's put tax depreciation shield. If I could spell it right. Now my friend Mike, oh, he would yell at me, and he said, oh, at the top you better put option explicit so you don't have these stupid spelling mistakes all the time, okay? But that's, of course, not going to be equal to 1. And then what we need to do is start collecting some of the information. And the first thing I think we should do is collect the life. Now, this is going to be kind of interesting. I think we'll make, and it might not be right, and this is the tax life, but I think if I put life, it'll be okay. We're going to put a for loop that goes from the year equals 0 this time to the life. Okay, and then we better somewhere put next year. Okay, and then we can look at it. Now the next thing we're going to do is we need to get our period by period depreciation. We're not going to do it for year 0. We're going to start in year 1. Okay, and this one, you know, if I put a false in here, okay, we don't want a 0, we want a false, and I'm a little bit worried about this. We want to make our depreciation rate, well, let's make our depreciation rate, actually the best way to do this, we'll have to start the array in period 1. So let's go and put up here, the first thing we need to do is put a dimension on our depreciation rate. And we need to say, okay, that could be 100 maybe. All right, and I didn't even put whether it's what kind of variable it is. And then we'll put if the year is greater than 0, then we'll do this. And then we'll put depreciation rate of the year. Year. Yes, that's depreciation rate for year 1. This might not work. Is equal, and then we put worksheet function, and you put dot. If I spell it right, dot. And hopefully now this is the big question, VDB. Oh, it's there. Oh, thank you. I've never tried it. And then we have to start putting those arguments in. It doesn't tell you what the arguments are, but let's cheat and go, here. And the first thing for the VDB is we need the 1 and 0, okay, because we're going to put a cost of 1 and 0 in. So let's put those in, 1, 0, comma, and then after we do that, we need the life, and then we need the prior year and the current year, and then we need a factor. Okay, so then up here, we're going to add a factor, but let's get the first thing. So we'll put life, and then after we get the life, we'll put year minus 1, and then year. And then we can get the factor. Okay. And then, you know, my friend Mike tells me that when you do this, you should use the debug, and he's very good at doing all this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put end if. We didn't really need an end if, and then we have our life. Now, what I might do here is, I'm worried because if you use now the let's put NPV of depreciation is equal to worksheet function dot NPV, and then we have the discount rate, and then we just have to put in our depreciation rate. But we have to worry about that first zero. I'm very worried about the first zero. And I'm going to try something. If I put up here, oh God, I have option base 1 already. Option base 1 means an array will only start here. So I hope this will work. It might well give us an error. And if it gives us an error, I'm going to show you the error. And what that means is we have to read in our little UDF, we have to read in the discount rate. Okay, and then we'll get the NPV of the discount rate. And then finally, and this should have been after the loop. Okay, and then if we are a little more elegant, we should indent that. And finally, we put the tax depreciation tax shield is times the tax rate. We have to put in the tax rate. And then hopefully, and then so we put the NPV of the depreciation like that, and we multiply it by the tax rate. Okay, and let's see if what happens. Oh, the first thing I'm going to do is try it. I'm going to save the file in case I made some crazy thing, and I'm going to put equals what did I call it? What did I call it? Equals tax shield, tax depreciation shield. Now, if you can't remember what to put in, you press Shift F3 and you put in the life, and then after you put in the life, you put in the factor, and then you put in the discount rate, and then you put in the tax rate. And it didn't like that. So I'm going to pause for a minute. Okay. I'll tell you the truth that maybe it's because I had one half of a glass of red wine last night. Maybe that's what's causing this problem. But here I put year, and year was not acceptable. And I was worried about life, so I put tax life. So I've changed this. And I was even worried about factor. And then I was having problems, so I had an on error. And I wasn't not getting the correct thing. And instead of doing what Mike does, I just put a message box. Now, when I put a message box and did this, it said, here's the depreciation in year 1, 0.33, 0.22, 0.14, 0.098, 0.098, and it gave me the right number. Oh, is this not cool now? All right, and I'll put this as my tax depreciation factor. And don't forget, then if I've got this and I put my contents here, I hope I can press Control Alt C. And I guess I can't because I just had I have to reinitialize after I screwed up screwed up something, Control-Alt-C, and I put this in, and I put this in, and you're never going to use it, and I'm sorry about that, but then you can get your picture of Elvis, replace that with your company name, and we have our sheets, and we have all of our little things done, and of course, if now I want to go to my LCOE sheet, and I want to go to the cost of capital and carrying charges, I'm going to go here. And then, if you want to go backwards, you just press this. This has caused me some problems, by the way. One of my clients, the auditors, didn't like this because I said, I keep going back to that, fix it. So, blah, 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 blah. So now, instead of putting this tax depreciation factor here in this straight line business, all I have to do is put equal tax depreciation shield, and I press Shift F3, and it says give me the tax life. And you can, of course, copy this and give me the factor, give me the pre-tax discount rate, and give me the tax rate. And then it goes through this thing, and of course, oh no, come on. Okay. And what I need to do is go and put my, change this, and of course take out the message box. And a lot of times I leave this in because I'm terrified that I'm going to screw it up again. And then I press Shift Control R, and it just gives me this, and I don't need this anymore. And we've got all of our factors, and then we go to our financial model, and for our tax depreciation period, for a tax depreciation rate, I really need another thing, so I'm going to cheat and put our factor right here, and then we put equal VDB, and we put a cost of 1, a salvage of 0, we put the prior period, and then the current period, and then we put the factor. Oops. Okay, and then it will all work. We get a num, so let's use our old if error. Put a comma 0. And Shift Control P, Shift Control R, and I didn't lock in something. Where's the life? Okay, I've got to pause for 1 second. Okay, I didn't put in the life properly. I had to put an extra thing in for the life, and then we get our factors. We should have put a test in, but this, hopefully you were looking at down here and seeing it's equal to 1. And then we get our IRR, and now, other than our financing, really our LCOE is finished, because if I change the factor to 1, you can see what happens to the cost of my solar project. If I change it to 2, if I could change it to 3, that's the big deal. Or in the old days, there was a 1.5, so that's a big negotiation that the investors will have with the government. And now we've got our taxes finished, and I'm going to put those slides for the hydrogen up here, and what I'm going to do later is go through the hydrogen and go through a solar plus battery example in a lot better of a way, hopefully in a lot simpler of a way that you can see everything. But we have to build this fundamental LCOE so we can make our model be automatic, and we can compute our price immediately, and we can start testing a whole lot of different technologies, and that's the end.